The first thing clothing ever covered was not shame. It was a weakness. Go back far enough. And the human body looks like a terrible design for cold weather. Thin skin, little fur, long limbs that leak heat. A sweating system built for movement under a brutal sun. And yet that apparent flaw was once one of our greatest advantages. On the open grasslands of Africa, most large mammals carried insulation everywhere they went. Fur protected them from the night, but it also trapped heat during the day. We took a different path. Our body hair thinned. Our skin became crowded with sweat glands. Instead of waiting for the air to cool, we turned water into a cooling machine. Sweat rose to the surface. Wind carried the heat away, while other animals slowed down in the midday furnace. We could keep moving. That mattered. A human hunter was rarely the fastest creature on the plain, but speed is only useful if you can keep it. Many animals can sprint. Fewer can run under a high sun until the ground itself seems to shimmer. Our ancestors learned to turn endurance into a weapon. They followed prey beyond the moment of panic, beyond the first burst of muscle, until the animal's own body became the trap. Bare skin helped make that possible. But evolution never gives gifts without sending an invoice. The same body that released heat so efficiently in daylight could lose it just as quickly after sunset. Rain clung directly to the skin. Wind read every hollow of the body. Insects fed without resistance. Thorn, stone, and ultraviolet light met almost no barrier at all. We had solved one problem by making ourselves vulnerable to another. Imagine the first cold night after a long hunt. The fire is small. The wind changes direction. The heat disappears every time you step away from the flames. The body that carried you across the plain is suddenly helpless. A cave can shelter you, but it cannot follow you. A fire can warm you, but it cannot travel on your back. So we began to build shelter that could move. The earliest clothing may not have looked like clothing at all. No sleeves, no buttons, no stitched seams. Perhaps it was only a hide pulled from a carcass and wrapped around the shoulders. Heavy, damp, rank with blood and fat, hard at the edges. But when the wind struck, something changed. The cold hit the skin of a dead animal instead of your own. That moment may have been more important than it appeared. We had taken a biological feature from another species and reassigned it. The animal grew its insulation. We manufactured ours. Clothing began as stolen anatomy. We ate the meat, cracked the bones, burned the fat, and wore the skin. One body became raw material for another. Survival was no longer limited to what evolution had placed inside us. This was a turning point in the human story. Fire moved heat outside the body. Stone tools moved sharpness outside the hand. Clothing moved protection outside the skin. Once that pattern began, it never stopped. We became the species that stored its abilities in objects. We did not need stronger claws if we could make blades. We did not need thicker fur if we could shape hides. We did not need to wait for our bodies to change if culture could change faster. That sounds like triumph. It was also the beginning of dependence. The more we protected ourselves with tools, the less complete the naked body became. A human without fire, clothing, shelter, and shared knowledge was not simply uncomfortable. In many environments, that human was already dead. This is the hidden cost of our success. We conquered climates by carrying artificial environments around us. We entered forests, steppes, deserts, and frozen plains wrapped in layers of borrowed protection. The world did not become safer. We became better at placing distance between the world and our skin. So the next time you pull a coat around your shoulders, remember what you are touching. It is not merely fabric. It is the descendant of a decision made when a nearly hairless animal realized that biology had left it unfinished. And once we began completing ourselves with objects, one question followed us everywhere. Did we master the environment? Or did we become the kind of creature that could no longer survive without hiding from it? The oldest clothing left almost no trace. The parasites did. Leather rots. Plant fiber breaks apart. Sinew disappears into soil. A stone blade can survive for hundreds of thousands of years. But the hide it cut may vanish in a few seasons. That creates a strange problem. We know ancient humans crossed into colder regions. We know many of them could not have survived there naked. Yet the clothes that made those journeys possible are mostly gone. So researchers looked for something that could not live without clothing. They found lice. Head lice spend their lives among hair. They grip the shafts, feed near the scalp, and glue their eggs in place. Clothing lice behave differently. They feed on the body, but they live and reproduce in fabric. Seams, folds, collars, and waistbands become their shelter. That means clothing lice could not exist until clothing became more than an occasional blanket. There had to be a stable habitat, not a hide thrown over the shoulders during one cold night, not a skin used and discarded. Clothing had to remain close to the body long enough, and often enough, for an entire parasite to evolve around it. By comparing the genetic differences between head lice and clothing lice, scientists have tried to estimate when the two lineages split. The answer is not a single date. Genetic clocks are imperfect. Populations shrink, expand, migrate, and mix. Evolution speeds up and slows down. But the range points deep into the past. Clothing may have become a regular part of human life tens of thousands of years before tailored garments appeared in the archaeological record. Some estimates push that transition back to around 170,000 years ago. If that is close to the truth, then clothing is far older than fashion, cities, agriculture, or written law. It belongs to the era when survival itself was still being redesigned. But the lice reveal something more important than a date. They reveal a threshold. There is a difference between using an object and building a life around it. At first, a hide may have been temporary. Pick it up when the wind rises. Drop it when the air warms. Leave it behind when it becomes too heavy or begins to smell. Then the climate shifts. The night grows harsher. Migration carries people farther. A covering that was once optional becomes constant. It absorbs sweat. It traps flakes of skin. It grows warm in the folds. Darkness settles inside the seams. A new ecosystem appears. We call it clothing. The lice call it home. This is one of the quiet rules of human progress. Every technology creates a habitat for something else. Granaries feed cities. They also feed rats. Settlements protect families. They also concentrate disease. Ships connect continents. They also carry organisms across oceans. Clothing shields the body. It also creates warmth. Hidden corridors where parasites can live beside the bloodstream. And once humans began crowding together in camps, armies, prisons, and refugee columns, clothing lice became more than an irritation. They could help spread disease through populations already weakened by hunger and stress. A tool designed to protect life could now carry death. That is not a contradiction. It is how technology works. Every solution changes the environment around the problem. Once the environment changes, new problems arrive. Clothing also changed how we sense the world. Before clothing, the skin met temperature directly. After clothing, fabric stood in between. The body no longer judged the cold alone. A layer of technology helped decide what we could tolerate, where we could travel, and how long we could remain outside. Our survival became mediated. This may be one of the deepest transitions in human evolution. We stopped adapting only through flesh. We began adapting through objects, habits, and shared systems. And those systems developed lives of their own. A louse hidden in a seam is a tiny witness to that transformation. It tells us that clothing was no longer something humans simply wore. It had become an environment. And once a tool becomes an environment, we do not merely control it. We begin living inside the consequences. The object that carried humans into the Ice Age was not a spear. It may have been a needle. A hide draped over the shoulders can block wind from one direction. But the moment you lift an arm, cold air enters. The moment you run, the covering shifts. Snow melts against the skin. Sweat cools. Heat escapes through every opening. In severe cold, loose protection is often not enough. The body needs a shell. That is where tailoring changes everything. The first tools used for this purpose may not have had eyes. A sharp bone awl could pierce a row of holes through hide. Sinew, rawhide strips, or twisted plant fibers could then pull the edges together. Later, eyed needles made the process faster and more precise. Thread passed through the hide with the tool. Seams became tighter. Repairs became easier. Sleeves, leggings, hoods, mittens, and fitted boots became possible. This is the difference between carrying a blanket and wearing a climate. The true insulation in clothing is often not the material alone. It is the still air held close to the body. Tight cuffs slow the wind. Layers trap warmth. Separate coverings for the legs allow movement without exposing the torso. Hoods reduce heat loss from the head. Footwear keeps frozen ground from pulling heat directly from the body. Tailored clothing did not make humans stronger. It made the cold less relevant. That distinction matters. Other animals usually adapt through generations of biological change. Thicker coats, shorter limbs, more body fat, different metabolisms. Humans discovered another route. We could cut the skin of an animal into pieces and sew it back together in the shape of a human body. That act looks simple. It was revolutionary. We did not wait for evolution to give us fur. We designed fur that could be removed, repaired, traded, inherited, and improved. This allowed culture to move faster than genes. A biological adaptation may take thousands of generations to spread. A successful sewing method can cross a community in one lifetime. But that speed came with a price. Tailored clothing is not obvious. A child does not automatically know which hide is warmest, how to scrape it clean, how to soften it, how to keep it from rotting, where to place the seams, or how much space must remain between skin and material. These skills have to be taught. That means survival in cold regions depended not only on intelligence, but on transmission. An experienced maker had to show someone younger how the material should feel under the hand, where it would tear, how tight a stitch could be before the hide split, how to shape a boot so it did not freeze around the foot. Lose that knowledge, and the environment becomes deadly again. This is why clothing belongs to the history of cooperation as much as the history of invention. A needle is useless without memory. A technique dies if no one demonstrates it. A community that preserves knowledge can enter places where an isolated genius cannot. This changes how we think about human power. We often imagine our ancestors conquering the cold through courage. But courage does not stop heat loss. Determination does not keep wet skin from freezing. What made expansion possible was accumulated skill. Someone learned how to work hide. Someone else learned how to twist fiber. Another person improved the seam. An elder remembered which design failed in the last winter. A child watched. The next generation began one step ahead. The needle stitched more than clothing. It stitched time. It connected one winter to another, one mind to another, one body to the experience of the dead. That may be the real human advantage. Not that each of us is unusually capable alone, but that we can inherit solutions to problems we have never personally faced. Once clothing became fitted, layered, and teachable, cold landscapes stopped being walls. They became challenges with instructions. Our bodies remained almost the same. Our reach expanded across the planet. This was a new kind of evolution. Flesh slowed down. Culture accelerated. But there is something unsettling inside that victory. The more survival depends on knowledge, the more fragile we become when knowledge disappears. A naked human can lose heat in minutes. A culture can lose a technique in a generation. So when we imagine the first bone needle passing through hide, we should not see only a tool. We should see a contract. From that moment forward, human survival would depend less on what the body carried at birth and more on what one mind managed to pass into another. Once clothing kept us alive, it began deciding what kind of life we were allowed to have. At first, a hide meant warmth. Then it began to mean status. One person wore soft fur. Another wore coarse fiber. One garment was dyed, repaired, and decorated. Another was stained by labor and patched until the original material was almost gone. Before anyone spoke, clothing had already delivered a message. This made it one of humanity's earliest visual languages. The human brain is built for fast judgment. In dangerous environments, hesitation can be expensive. Friend or stranger, powerful or weak, healthy or sick, safe or threatening. Clothing gave those instincts new material. A rare pelt could signal hunting skill. A feathered headdress could signal ritual authority. A specific color could mark clan, profession, rank, marriage, mourning, or war. The body became a signboard. Power no longer had to be physically present in every moment. It could be represented. A robe could command obedience before the person inside it spoke. A uniform could turn an ordinary body into an officer, a priest, a judge, or a prisoner. Fabric began speaking for institutions. That is a remarkable shift. Clothing was invented to protect humans from nature. Eventually, it helped humans organize control over one another. The same garment that shelters the body can also classify it. Who is respectable? Who is dangerous? Who belongs? Who must be watched? Who may enter? Who must kneel? And once clothing becomes part of social order, nakedness changes meaning. Small children are not born understanding which parts of the body are forbidden to show. Shame has to be taught. It is learned through correction, imitation, punishment, and attention. Different cultures conceal different things. Some cover the hair. Some cover the face. Some emphasize the chest, the legs, the waist, or the shoulders. The rules shift across place and time. This suggests that clothing does not merely obey shame. It helps create it. The more normal clothing becomes, the more abnormal the uncovered body appears. We begin by covering ourselves for protection. Then we build moral systems around the fact that we are covered. The body is divided into zones: public and private, honorable and indecent, visible and forbidden. This can protect privacy. It can reduce conflict. It can create shared expectations. It can also become a weapon. Dress codes can control women. Uniforms can erase individuality. Luxury can announce who has access to labor and wealth. Rags can become evidence of supposed moral failure. A society that controls clothing often controls the interpretation of the body beneath it. And clothing carries one more contradiction. It hides desire while producing it. What is covered becomes scarce. What is scarce attracts attention. A sleeve, a collar, a veil, a fitted line. A deliberately exposed patch of skin, all of these manage the eye. Clothing does not end display. It edits display. We think we are hiding the body. Often, we are directing attention toward it. Modern wardrobes may look far removed from animal hides and bone needles. But the underlying machinery is still there. When you stand in front of a mirror and change your shirt again, you are not simply choosing material. You are choosing signals, competence, taste, wealth, rebellion, belonging, distance, availability, control. Clothing helps us enter society. But society enters us through clothing in return. We learn to see ourselves from the outside. We imagine the judgment before it happens. We dress not only for weather, but for the eyes of people who are not yet in the room. The first garment was a second skin. The modern garment can become a second identity. That is the final transformation. We once wore clothing because the world was too cold for the human body. Now we often wear it because the social world is too dangerous for an unedited self. So the next time you look into a mirror and ask whether an outfit feels right, pause for a moment. Are you choosing what to wear? Or are you trying to become the version of yourself that the world has already decided it is willing to accept?